Okay.
I like that.
Ms. Hine, will you call us to order, or to enter the meeting at 6:03 for training?
That was exciting.
My head was cut off. So you could see everything but my head.
Okay, so do you want me to just launch into her?
Sure.
Okay, so we were requested to do a budget workshop, so here's a budget workshop. Feel free to stop me anytime with questions. I brought along my assistant because she's the one that will know everything. So here's our agenda. We're going to just briefly cover the school board roles in the budget process. I put a TASB thing on the slides. Then we're going to go some of the differences between budgets you might be used to and school budgets. We're going to go over the budget process calendar. Then we're going to look at some summary of this year's budget with salaries, and then some summaries without salaries, so that you can see, how much of the salaries go and how much of the everything else goes. And then we have the line by line as requested. So the school board's role in adopting a budget, you can see all the items that TASB says. Review the calendar, which we'll do. Examine assumptions and broad guidelines. Study the budget proposal to make sure it reflects the goals and priorities of the board. Hold required public hearings. Adopt a budget and approve a tax rate to fund it. Monitor the district's activity, and hire the auditor. So, the thing that I really wanted to point out was what they have on the rest of their slide, is that you need to know a basic information about our budget, which we're going to cover that tonight. And then, as we do things in the year, you need to be sure, like hiring people. How does that affect our budget? Whether we raise, like we're probably going to come to you and ask you to look at the at-will pay structure. Whether we do that, how does that affect our budget? So the decisions you make may not be direct budget decisions. And I'm not saying you guys don't do this, because you guys actually are really good at doing this. But I just want to point it out. So the decisions you make are what really affect the budget. There's not a whole lot of wiggle room in the budget. That's something that we'll see as we go through it. So most of the budget decisions are made actually before we even present the budget to you. Okay, so school budgets versus other budgets. In Texas, a school budget is different than any other public or private budget in that we have a code structure. Whoops, wrong button. We have a code structure that is completely specified for us. So for example, principal buying a book, there is a specific code for it. Cities aren't like that, counties aren't like that. They just develop their own chart of accounts. We have a chart of accounts given to us. So if you go out, well, why did you need a code for this specific item? Well, because because TEA has said that's where a specific item gets coded. So that's something that's very unique to schools. I wish it was unique to other public entities, because one of the cool things about this is if you look, say, at our budget, and then you go look at, one of our neighbors' budget, you're going to know exactly what it says because everything is specified by TEA in our code. So it's all in what's called the Financial Accounting Systems Resource Guide, the FASRAG as we call it. And here's just a sample page out of the FASRAG. So that code 6399, it tells us what we can and what we can't use it for. Another thing that's different about school budgets is you're going to see several items that are highlighted, and that's because we have allotments, and we have to spend at least those amounts. And so there's a lot of line items in our budget that we don't have a choice. We have to spend that amount. And that's a unique thing about the school budget. Another unique thing is that line items are not necessarily, like if you'll notice here, we only have 3,500 budgeted, but we spent 77,000 already. But in the corresponding line item above it, we have more budgeted and we've spent less. All that legally is required of us is the fund and function be positive. That we can't go negative for fund and function, but individual line items we can. And one of the reasons we leave individual line items like that is we'll probably leave it, we'll clean it up before the end of the year, and move some money around, but we leave it like that because when you hit the budget process, it's good to know, hey, in this area, we're spending more than we were budgeting. So in this particular instance, this was because of all the legal fees we had associated with the activities in August. And school budgets, we covered this in before you two got on here. We had I did a report where I showed how our fund balance was actually pretty healthy and has been healthy for a while. Because we typically, like we'll budget in a deficit, but we typically end up not spending a deficit because there's lots of line items that we don't actually spend. And so that's something that's different. We're not trying to hit the exact amount. You know, like I remember when I worked at Oak Ridge many years ago, in a federal agency, when it got to the end of the year, it was like, okay, there's X number left in your budget, spend that puppy before the end of the year. That's not how we operate, for the most part. There's a couple of departments that might, but for the most part, that's not how we operate. We spend what we need to spend. Okay, so any questions before I hit the calendar? Okay, so March, we plan the budget process, so that's what we're doing right now. April through May, I'll distribute worksheets to the principals and the athletic director that look very similar to what you're going to see on the line by lines tonight. It's just their portion of the budget for them to look at to see if there's anything that they are specifically going to change. Most of the time they don't do much on it because, like I said, there's not a ton of wiggle room. The decisions that the campus principals make that change the budget are, we're going to use, I don't know, NWEA instead of this other piece of software to do testing. And then, so we'll have to adjust amounts for that. There's also, you'll see that there's, in the line items, you'll see that there are places where we could juggle some money around. But for the most part, and just another informational item, for the last few years, we've tried to keep about the same level of budget. So when we send out those sheets, we say, try not to increase. In years prior to HB3, we'd send out the budget and we'd say, hey, we need to go down 10%. Find 10% to cut from this. So we'll send those out in April, May. They'll get them back to me. Then in the end of May, we receive the certified early appraisal values. And they are not really worth much. They don't have mineral in them, which is a big chunk of our things. And not our largest county, but one of the other county appraisers literally put on there, don't use these values, they're not right. So the values we get in May just give us a glimpse of, okay, this is how much our values are going to be. So that's the thing that's why we don't actually present the budget and do the budget until August, is because we don't really know what our tax values are going to be. So it's hard to estimate our revenue until we get to the beginning of August. In June, we'll come to you and set the compensation plan. So that's when we'll make our recommendations about salary for the teachers, the at-will staff, and stuff like that. So that's our first time when we'll take those values we got in May and we'll say, we think that we're going to be up, we think that we're going to be down in some money, but we won't have any specific figures for you. Like I said, if you have questions, stop me at any time. July, in the past, we've done our workshop where, like I said, we didn't do it last year because we thought we were having a bond, but typically in the years prior to that, in July we would have a workshop that would talk about all the things on our long-term maintenance plan. So we can do that in July or earlier if we need to. So we'll just go over everything we have on it, things that you guys want to add. Because that'll drive, and you'll see here in a little bit, 51 is a huge part. 51 is maintenance and operations. It's a huge part of our budget. So that drives a significant portion of our budget. The end of July, I think it's the 25th, we receive the actual certified values. And at that point, we can actually make an accurate estimate of our revenue. And so then we can make adjustments. So then that meeting at the very 1st of August is when we present to you the budget packet for you guys to look at. It's the first time you see it. And then in the last week of August is when we'll actually adopt the budget and set the tax rate. Now the tax rate, there's really not a whole lot of choice in the tax rate. You guys could always go down, but the state really, because they still are doing compression every year. I can't remember if this is the last year of compression or if there's one more, but there's compression every year. And so they say, okay, this is the maximum rate that you can charge, and it's going down a little bit every year. And so really for the M&O. So really for M&O, that top amount is set for you, and so that's what we present to you. And like I said, you can always go down. I wouldn't recommend it. But going up is, you just really don't have an option. On INS, we have to set a tax rate that's enough to cover the payments. So that's usually pretty set on us for well. So there's really not a whole lot of choice on tax rate either.
And just so y'all kind of think about it, we're adopting the budget after school starts. I do not like that. I complain every year about that, but that's why I'm told the only way they can do it. So just in case that kind of clicks a light bulb, you're like, hey, we're already started and we haven't even approved a budget yet.
Yep.
That's a.
And every school does, except for the ones that are July start schools. But every September 1 start school, I mean, you out and look, there's a board meeting the last week of August on every single school. But it is, we start.
Yep.
And so, like we'll tell, like for example, we talked with our custodian today and said, okay, make sure you have everything you need for that first month. Since he's new to the position, our head custodian. And because you have to start school and we won't have new funds until September 1st. So, it is true.
Is that because the state's fiscal year starts in September?
Why we start September 1st? The state usually actually starts in October. It's specified in law that you, like most state agencies, start in October 1st, or a good portion of them, let me say that. In law, we have to either choose September 1st or July 1st, I think it is. And virtually, that's probably not true, 80% of the schools choose September 1st. Because if you do July 1st, you're setting a budget before you know your revenues.
Right.
And so it is a complete guess. Like it's not, those early values we get, they are just not accurate at all. And so it's very hard to set your budget correctly.
Well, that ones weren't very accurate either. This year.
Well, that's a whole nother story.
That's what I'm saying.
But so most schools do September 1st.
Okay.
There are some, like I can't remember exactly who around here. There's a few around this area that do it July 1st. But it's just, most schools choose it just because it's easier because of the values. Okay, so this is this year's budget. This graph was actually in the thing I passed out in early August. This is with salaries included. So as it should be, the vast majority of it goes into instruction. And then plant maintenance, 51, is the next highest by far, followed up by general administration, 41, and school administration, 23. So, I mean, the vast majority of our employees are here. Now, one thing, this is all about 199, the general operating budget. I don't have 240, the child nutrition, so the cafeteria workers and their expenses and stuff are not in here. None of the federal programs are in any of these things. So, because we do have a few cafeteria workers. But the vast majority of our employees are in instruction. Okay? So, in this year, 75% of our payroll, 75% of our budget is payroll. If you include the federal funds, that jumps up to like 82%. The next biggest thing is services at 12%, and then supplies at 5%, other at 7, and capital improvements, buying the bus at 1. Other is typically meals, hotels, items like that. So, and we'll look at that a little more when we go line by line. So if you look, I also did it by organization. So the high school is 27% of our budget, the junior high 15, elementary 28, district admin 8, and general operating 22. General operating includes 51, the plant maintenance I was talking about, 34, the student transportation, 36 extra. 36 extracurricular activities is probably mostly in there. Things like that, all the things that aren't a specific campus or the administration. Actually, 36 is probably divided out among the campuses. Yeah, so 36 probably isn't there. So mainly 34, data processing 53, security 52, just all that other stuff, that's all general operating. But as you can see, the elementary gets the largest piece of the pie, followed closely by the high school. And then down. Any other questions, or any questions? Okay, well then we're going to look at it with the salaries, take it out. So if you take out the salaries, by far the largest is plant maintenance and operations. We have lots of projects that we've done. We also have all the utilities are in there, so you've got like 111,000 for electricities in there, 130,000 for insurance, for the building insurance. I mean, so things like that are in plant maintenance operation. It's always going to be your largest non-salary line item. Followed, the next one is once again instruction, as it should be. Payments to physical agents. That's our special ed co-op. So, and then 36, the co-curricular, 34, student transportation and general administration, and then it starts leveling out after that. Any questions? Okay, so here's this pie again. You'll see that 62% of the non-payroll budget is in services. So these are contracted services or repair services, like if we have a plumber come out, that's considered a service. So most of this money is something that's set, that we're going to have to do if we do that particular service. For example, I mentioned NWEA earlier. If we do NWEA, it's going to cost this. And so we really can't fudge on those figures, because that's what it costs. And so when I talk about we don't have a lot of wiggle room in the budget, this is why. Is because salaries are set by what you guys, who you hire, and then the 62% of the rest of your money is absolutely set in stone, just because those are the contracts that you choose. Now you can get rid of some contracts if you needed to cut, but if you have those contracts, that's set in stone. And then even some of these others are things that we'll look at that you really can't move around. But so 62% in services, 13% in supplies, 21% in other, and 4% in for the bus. Questions? Okay, then we did it by organization again. So the high school is 23%. The elementary is 12, district admin is 14, junior high is 7, and general operating is 44. In the non-salary budget, it costs more at the high school than it does at, say, the elementaries. Because if you look at it, you're going, why is the elementary half of what the high school is? So the elementary, you have a class of, 20 kids or whatever. At the high school, you're going to have classes of, I don't know, like, do we still do an accounting class?
Yeah, she don't have that many kids in it though.
Probably 4 to 6 kids. And so you get an economy of scale at the elementary that you just can't get at the high school because you're offering those independent classes. You also have all of your extracurricular activities at the high school that the elementary just doesn't have. So that's why the high school is so much more than the elementary. The elementary is so much more than the junior high just because of the number of kids. And then once again, general operating is a big piece of the pie. Questions? Okay. Well then, we're going to look at one other thing here, the account code structure. So this account code, well, I was talking about earlier that you can look at an account code and know exactly what it is. So 199, this is the general fund, and then, like I said, everything we're going to talk about is going to be in 199 today. 11 is instruction, 6399 is a miscellaneous expense, 88 is technology, 41 is the junior high, so this is the junior high technology budget in that code. So, the things we'll look at, like we won't see the 199 in any of those reports, but we'll look at the function and probably just the object. So, but it's a good thing about, actually it's just a good thing. I don't know if there's any drawback about school finance, is that you have very specific coding to where something goes. So, with that, we will jump into the line by line. I'm going to take a drink. So, I'm going to move over to this side. Give Mother Eye some time to go. Okay, so NWEA. That's a testing software that we use. We don't use it anymore at the junior high. And at the elementary, we changed the coding from a 11 instruction to a 30 is that is SCE, State Comp Ed. It's for your at-risk students. So you can see we changed it, and you're going to see a lot of leftover codes in here. Like I tried to delete a code today to clean it up. The system just won't let me delete codes a lot of the time. And so you're going to see a lot of codes that just have zeros next to them, and the system just doesn't let me get rid of them. So, 116217, software contract NWEA, 3750. So that's the testing software that, and Kim has talked about it several times, I think, when she's giving you reports. So that's that one. Contracted services ACAL, that is the nursing classes at the high school. That's how much it costs us. TDSN services, that is the Spanish that we're doing online. Software learning, that's at the high school. It's a 001. It's a software that you guys use for tutorials, I believe. So software serious education is at the junior high, and it's what they use for tutorials. Now, and if you wonder why I break it up so specifically, is because like when I first started doing this, there was just like software. And you'd have, like 15,000 in that account, and you have to figure out what's in that account. So each year we've tried to start breaking items out into individual accounts, because when you get to budget season, it just makes it so much easier to go, okay, what is this? Instead of, you're going to see when we get to technology, there's a other software, and I hate that, because then I have to track down what exactly do we pay out of other to see if we need that. So that's why we do a lot of them very specifically. Software service Edgenuity. Edgenuity is, like at the high school, Edgenuity is the what we use in the Flex Lab. At the elementary, it's they use it as Pathblazer. It's a resource that they help. Once again, we recoded it to CTE. So
is that just a one-time payment per year?
This software actually costs $10,000. Well, it did. We reduced the number of licenses, but it cost $10,000. But we paid $9,000 of it out of a federal fund, and just pay the other $1,000 out of this account. And yeah, that's an annual cost. I have no idea why this code's there, because prom will never be in. Because 11 is instruction. I forgot. We're in 11 right now, so that's instruction, and prom is never instruction. So that's one of those codes that just won't let me delete.
Is that federal, get back on that software, sorry.
Yes.
So is that yearly, we get the federal funding for that, or is that part of
Yes.
ESSER stuff? Or?
It's a Title IV.
Okay.
So, professional services Plan A, these are our occupational and physical therapy. that we do for our special ed students. So that's, the green ones, if they're shaded green, it's set by some kind of allotment, and it's something that we don't have a choice on what we spend. This particular one is set by, we get our physical therapy and our occupational therapy from the Turn Center, and sometime during the summer, they'll give it to Patty Brown, our special ed director, and she will give me the, what they're gonna charge for the next year, and then we divide it out on the campuses based on population. So that's what these three are. Then we get into our contracts with Region 16. We have several contracts with Region 16. They do a lot of things for us. And so typically I can tell you from the code, I don't know what ES21 is. Do you have that? Oh yeah, it's the Teach resource. So that's the resource that's available for the teachers. You'll notice this is specifically to the high school. There'll be another one, there it is, for the junior high, and then there's another one on the next page for the elementary. They bill us on those. Oh, another thing I need to tell you guys, this year actual amount was taken, I don't know, the end of January, so it is not an accurate snapshot of what we've spent to date. It's whenever I set up the budget. I'll update that before I send it out to the principals, probably second week in April, probably. But so those numbers are not accurate at all. There's still a lot of spending that's happened since then. But so typically, like for example, the Teach Resource Contract, it'll be split out amongst the campuses, and typically it's based on population, or sometimes we base it on just the number of students, or just sometimes we just divide it into thirds. It just depends. This region, this ES001 contract, man, we talked about that earlier. Or ES001. Oh, yes, the GT contract. So we contract with them for services like GT. So for example, what that means is that then when we have a GT question, we can call them up. If they give GT workshops, then our teachers can go to them without cost. And so that's a lot of the contracts are that way. The ESL contract is zero because we typically don't have any ESL students. So they don't charge us, and except for if we have a student, and then typically we get an allotment for that, and then the allotment just goes to the service center. So we really haven't been ever billed since I've been here on the ESL. 16 is a leadership contract. It's so that the administrators can go to things like the PSLA conferences and other leadership workshops. So then we have 21 again, all these other ones that we just talked about. Leadership again, 21 again, the GT, ESL, and leadership. Okay, then on our copiers, we have two different contracts on the copiers. We have the actual rental contract, and then we have the maintenance contract. The maintenance contract is based on the number of pages printed on the copier. And so we set the budget by what we've typically done in the year past. Those are, was it a 3 or 5 year contract? Yeah, it's up in a year or two, and we'll go out for bids. Or the last one we bought, we signed off of the buy board, so it was bid for us. I don't know. We'll probably try to go out for bids this next time. They do a good job. I've been here when we've had bad copiers, and it's a miserable experience. And so the people who've been doing our copiers have been doing a pretty good job. They are expensive. Then we get, and those are yellow. All of those are yellows because those are contracts. So we really don't get to choose how much we budget for that. It's just based on whatever our contract is. Contracted services at the high school, that's in case we have anything that we have to have somebody come in, like for example, if we had a speaker come in, we could charge it to contracted services. Same thing at the junior high and the elementary. Contracted services band, like that's, like the person that helps him with his marching, and then do we do repairs there or not? I don't think so. Yeah, so it's just when he has people that help him, outside consultants that help him, that's what that is. Whoops. Okay. Auto shop, that's they come clean the oil drum thing. Yeah. Okay, then we move on to the expenses in 11. So GT, we are required to, and hey, I was wrong, I did budget it. We are required to spend a certain amount in GT, so that's why it's, actually that one should be green too, because it's required. ACT supplies actually should be green, I got those backwards. That's if we pay for ACT tests, that's where that goes in. Dyslexia is another allotment we get that we have to spend a specific amount in, so that's why every campus has a GT and a dyslexia expense. It's another leftover code. That's the supplies we do for band. And we don't do supplies for nursing anymore because they're really, I don't know why. Then that's the general supplies at the high school. That's just there where he buys things like desks and stuff like that out of for the classrooms. Same thing for the junior high. And the elementary one's a little different. You might be going, wow, that is super low, but they have another account. And some of their stuff is spread out in some other accounts. But so they do have some money somewhere else as well. We have for our CTE courses, we have a home ec department. Then you have supplies for your art department. Your auto mechanic supplies for our another CTE course. And then we don't have voc comp anymore. We don't have supplies junior high computer because we supply that out of their technology supplies. Then we do have a separate line item for supplies for science for the high school and the junior high. Here's some more supplies for the elementary. We code this as state comp ed money because the elementary is a Title I campus. So every kid on that campus is considered at risk for state comp ed. So we can code all of their supplies to SCE.
Hang on a second, please. Just real quick on that dyslexia stuff.
Yes, sir.
I know that's been since January, you haven't updated it, but what kind of supplies is that? Like, do we have a dyslexia program here?
Mhm.
So what kind of supplies is that?
Training mostly, and then there's a salary that, so we have one person, and I didn't have it coded at this time. And so I actually will have to move some of this to, actually a good portion of that is gonna end up moving to salary, because we have a person that's a half-time, that's all they do is dyslexia. And I did the budget at the first of the year, I did not realize that. And so the majority of the dyslexia money will be spent for that. And then there are tests and things. The dyslexia program, and I think Jason will back me up on this, it's a work in process. It's something that we started really to work on it maybe 2-3 years ago.
3 years ago.
And you know, Edie brought it a certain way, and we're continuing to work on it. So.
Because like this summer, we'll send a teacher from each campus to Region 16, and they'll go through a 5-day training. So we're switching the program. We're going to go by, was it Reading by Design?
Yeah.
Is what we're switching to, and so they'll get trained for 5 days.
So what's the benefit to spreading out elementary supplies compared to just leaving
Well,
them in one like the junior high and high school?
we have to spend money on state comp ed,
Oh,
and-
yeah, you said
and so showing in state comp ed. Then on some of the other places, like they use more copy paper than other places, and they use more, gosh, there's somewhere else that's a lot larger. So it's just the way that their use happens. Whereas at the high school and the elementary, they don't have as much specific things, and they don't have this, I can't charge stuff to state comp ed for them. On all these allotments, there's a certain, like on state comp ed, we get, I don't know, 470,000, and we are required to code at least half of that, 55% of that has to be coded as state comp ed, so that you can show that you're actually doing state comp ed. And so, like I said, at the elementary, it's just easy to do it there because everyone is considered at risk since they're a Title I campus. Most of the other campuses don't have, like they're at the high school, there was a software earlier where that was coded to state comp ed, but there's very few supplies at the other campuses coded to state comp ed, because at the other campus, if I code something to state comp ed, it has to be used only for, or predominantly for at-risk kids. So like that software for the Flex Lab, you know, anybody who's in there for credit recovery is considered at risk because they're recovering credits, and so that's why we can buy that software for it. So at the other campuses, mostly we use our state comp ed money for salaries. Every time you have a tutorial, I can charge that to state comp ed because the kids in there, it's to help them. Reading, I've lost the name for reading classes, but like 6th and 7th grade reading, those are not required classes by law, so we can charge those to state comp ed because we can say we're increasing the ability of our students to succeed. So that's why it's divided up like that. Being a Title I campus gives me a little more leeway on how we code things.
So like the art supplies, is that just for the high school campus, just for art class?
Yep, so it's 001, so it is the high school, and it is for the art class, yes, sir.
And, okay. That's as of January, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah. Some of the programs you'll see spend their money early, some spend their money late. Like for example, the technology, we do a good portion of the work over the summer. So we have to save up the money and spend it over the summer. Some programs like art, if she buys all of her supplies at the beginning of the year, then it'll be all spent. A lot of them spend it throughout the year. So, any other questions? Good questions. Okay, these are our special ed supplies at each campus. Then yet another leftover code. Then here's another thing that we pulled out is we pulled copy paper out of the general supplies, and that's what we spend on copy paper each year. We have a contract with Region 16. They buy copy paper for every district who participates, which is every district, in Region 16, so that they can get a bulk price for copy paper. And so we'll buy that. I don't remember when it happens. I think we get it in like May, don't we? Yeah. And so that's why, like, if you're in like the elementary copy room in May or whenever after it ever, you know, there's going to be a huge pile of copy paper. But by the time that you get to that point in the next year, it'll almost all be gone. And sometimes we have to buy some more to meet demand.
So you can change through budget lines like your Plan A for your special sped. Like so, if I'm sorry, go ahead.
It's an allotment. It's once again special ed is an allotment, so
Right.
I have to hit a specific figure.
But I mean, can you move those numbers like? Okay, so say if you have one that leaves the elementary school and they have more funding, and they go to the middle school, can you take that money out of the elementary to the middle school?
Well, and anything within 11 can be moved.
Okay.
It's only if it's, so I mean, even in the middle of the year. So say we've had before where we've had a student that for some reason started out at one campus, a special ed student, and then ended up at another campus for some reason. We can transfer the money within a fund and function.
Okay.
Since y'all approved at the fund and function level, the transferring within a function happens at our level. So what will happen is like, say Mr. Vanderpool will send me an email saying, hey, I need to move some money from this code to this code, just for whatever reason. And then we'll go ahead and do that and adjust the budget as needed. But it has to stay within the function. If it's without or outside the function, then that's when we bring a budget amendment to you. Okay, so we have our copy paper. If sometimes we've coded some of the copy paper to state comp ed as well, and so that's why there's an extra one there. Then we get into our technology for each campus. Once again, so probably our largest expansion in technology is toner cartridges to go with the copy paper. We run through a lot of toner with those copies. This SEE technology, that's the Edgenuity for the Flex Lab for the credit recovery, so that's coded to state comp ed. And then you have the other two campuses' technology. Any other questions? Okay, we'll move on to other. So, like I said, most of the stuff in other is going to be travel. When we say travel, that can be meals, can be hotels. Typically, it's not fuel because we charge that to 34. So, really, that meals and lodging are what is considered travel. So some budgets will have some travel in it, like this is a special ed. 23 at the end means it's special ed. So this is when Reba will take some people and go to, actually I don't know where she takes them and goes to, but she does take students occasionally and they do stuff. So that's what that one's for. The GT travel, that's she took them to that's when Dixie was back here and she took the kids to a play, and we still have that line item. We just haven't ever gotten rid of it. Then you have the student travel at the junior high and the elementary, and at $5.98, I'm guessing that was a meal for some student that we had to travel for. You have art travel, because she takes her students to some events. Same thing with auto shop. Occasionally Romney takes the kids to AC, I believe it is, to look at their program. And once again, we don't have VoteCon anymore. Then we have field trips. So we don't take a bunch of field trips to high school. So then we have the junior high and the elementary field trips. Plan A field trip, once again, for her to take her kids on a field trip. And then ACAL dues, we don't really have those anymore. And art fees and dues, if she enters their items in an event. So that is all of the instruction budget. Any questions? Okay. We'll move on to 12. 12 is, it has some big long name on the graph, but it's library. So Renaissance Place is AR. If you've heard kids mention AR, that's what Renaissance Place is. So that's a contract. I actually should have shaded that one. That we have. Contracted services, high school, junior high, and elementary. That's our library software, which we can't think of the name. Destiny. That's its name. That's our Destiny software for our library. And then they have budgets for purchasing magazines, periodicals, and then general supply budgets. So, any questions about the library budgets? 13 is curriculum, and so I did put a copy of this out on as a download on the board book. So if you download it, there's going to be a whole bunch more in 13 that's all just empty zeros. So for tonight, I just deleted all of those and just have the ones that we actually have money in. So travel employee is when if employees have to go, primarily teachers, if they have to go to some training. So you have that at the various campuses. This one is the reading academies. We won't actually spend that because Esser's paying for it. So we'll show it as an expense and then immediately transfer it back out and into the Esser funds for the next couple of years. And then travel band, that's for the band directors, not for the students. Any questions on curriculum? Okay. 23 is your school administration, so your office staffs. Plan for Learning is the software that we use to do the campus improvement plans and the district improvement plans. That is the leadership contract. And then we don't have anything specifically for contracted services for the offices. If a principal buys a book or something, we have to code it in these particular, they haven't bought one in a while just for themselves. Typically they buy the books for the teachers and so it gets coded to 11. So we don't have anything there. And then there's their general office supplies for each campus. Oops. Questions? Okay, 23. What is 23? Oh, yeah, it's still the office. I thought we went to another, but sorry, having a moment. So that's the travel for the office staff in case they have to go to something. Awards and incentives. And you might hear me say this a lot. When they're like, hey, can we do something? I'm like, no, it's not legal because you can't give away money. The state constitution says you cannot do a gift of public funds. However, you can do morale improvement things. There isn't a set amount, but the Attorney General for the state has said that $50 is what you shouldn't go above. So you can do anything below $50. You can't give them cash because then you run into rules about running it through payroll. But so for example, when we do our meal and we feed them, well, that's under $50. That's it. Yes, it could be considered a gift, but it's a something to do a morale. So that's where this awards and incentives comes from. Is we want the staffs to be able to do things for their teachers. I don't know. What's something that you've done?
Adam Chop Chop. Let's see, what else we done? We did Plaza. I think I did Slim Chickens one time.
So food seems to be a good morale booster.
Food is a good morale booster.
So that's what the awards and incentives are. So
Does it gotta be for the group or for individual, or?
I could do it either way.
there's no law that says as long as it's a morale booster. So say we're doing the teacher of the month and they get a little plaque or something. As long as it's under $50 in expense, that's considered a morale boosting activity and it is legal. So. Okay, fees and dues. That's just anytime there's a fees and dues, typically that'll be for your principal. I don't know if there's many fees and dues for the office staff. And then another leftover line, miscellaneous operating expenses. Okay, that is the end of 23. Any questions on the office budgets? $31 is, don't tell me, counselors. So this contract is the counseling contract that we have. We added that just a couple of years ago, and they were very, very happy. It allows them to get help from Region 16 on various activities that they do as counselors. Then we have a testing materials budget, just primarily at the high school. And travel. So typically, counselors also, one of the reasons travel isn't because counselors can, if they travel somewhere, it gets charged to 13 as well. So they don't have one of their own really. So that's really the counseling. Now, the other thing you're not seeing is obviously their salaries in 31. So 31 has more than this, but most of it's salaries. Any questions? Okay, we'll move on to 33, which has almost nothing except for supplies. 33 is student health. It's our nurses stuff. You'll notice we have this as 999 instead of as specifically as campus. That was a request from our nurse because when you buy stuff, it's not necessarily okay. I bought it for this campus. You might buy it for both campuses, and so it was just easier to be able to, so that both campuses could pull stuff out of that, or actually any three of the campuses could pull stuff out of that budget. So that's our supplies. It was a little elevated because I expected to have to buy some equipment this year, but we didn't end up having to buy that. So it's typically just around, I don't know. Actually, it's typically not even this much. We don't spend a ton, except for when we have to buy, like the AEDs, they will come out of this budget. They have to be looked at in every campus. Any of the stuff that she wants. So typically what happens is she'll say, hey, we're going to have to buy this next year, and then we'll just raise or lower the budget based on the equipment that we're going to buy that year. Any questions on that? Okay, 34 is transportation. So consultants, now you told me earlier, drug testing for our bus drivers, that's right. I just can't ever remember that. Our transportation software, we added that last year. We still don't have it fully up and running. We really hope to get that fully up and running next year. Then this is special ed.
What is that transportation software? What is it?
Gosh, what is the name of it?
Well, I mean, what is it?
Well,
Where they
it's
scan to get on.
where
and off the
scan to get on and off the buses. The idea was we had that big wreck. And we didn't know exactly, okay, we knew how many kids were gone. We knew that all these kids went, but we didn't know which bus they were on. And so 2 buses had the wreck, 2 buses didn't have the wreck. And we didn't know which kids were in the wreck and which kids weren't in the wreck. So when parents called, we didn't know. So the idea of the software is that so that we can always know, and not only for that, like say something happens, like we've had several times when there's been an accident where somebody pulls out in front of the bus and we drive into it. And if we have the software running, we can at the campus level or even at the administration level, we can just pull up a list of here's all the kids on that bus. You can call those parents. So the problem that we had this year is simply that we're having a manpower issue. We had it ready to implement at the beginning of this year, and then the labor shortage has just killed us there. We're struggling to just get people on the bus, let alone have somebody to have the time to make sure that that's all set up and running good.
Is that a yearly charge or just that? Is that just the one time just to get it going?
The 9,000, yeah, that's an annual cost. So it is not cheap. But
No, that 37,630, was that just to buy the software?
that was the buy-in, yeah.
Okay.
The 9,000, I mean, that's the annual cost right there. And eventually we're gonna have, make it every time that a student's on the bus, including like when football kids are on the bus, I mean, anytime a kid is on the bus, they'll be registered in the software. And so we really thought we were gonna have it up and running this year, but COVID has just killed everything, so.
So we're paying $9,200 a year right now and it's not working?
Pretty much.
Was it in with the cameras and stuff?
No,
Did it-
those are separate.
Separate? Okay.
That was just that software, where your kid gets on the bus and they scan their card, and then it tells
Now,
I was thinking it did
that
something else too.
It's there.
we have got some benefit out of it. We've been able to run some ridership reports from when because we were using it at the first of this year. But with constantly having sub-drivers, there's just no chance of getting it working. But we have got some benefit. It saved us some money, because they lost some ridership reports. And so we didn't have a list of kids who rode a bus, and so I couldn't turn that into TEA for reimbursement. And because we had the software and we had used it some, we were able to turn that bus in. So it has saved us a couple of times on things, but yeah, it's pretty much money that's not being utilized now. So, okay, you'll notice we have a large expense for our special ed bus broke down and took a significant amount to repair. It's our oldest bus in the fleet, and that's why we've said that we really do want to still buy a bus next year because we really need to replace it. We did also have, it was a bad year for buses. We had quite a bit of expense in the regular ed buses this year as well. We had a couple of them break down pretty bad. So. Then our bus supplies, we have to separate special ed and regular ed. So this is fuel mainly. I mean, there's a few other things, air filters and stuff like that, but mainly fuel. So, we probably spend close to $30,000 a year in fuel on for our regular ed buses. Our allotment from the state is less than that. So the state doesn't pay us back all that we drive, or all our expense. You'll have some janitorial supplies at that level, and then miscellaneous supplies. Then when we move down into the another thing that's in other is insurance. 6429 is specified as insurance. So our big insurance that we bring to you, which we probably we need to talk about it. We talked about it last month. We did the thing so that we can redo the insurance. I forgot about that. So it's like $145,000. How much did you tell us it was going to go up? 10%?
I think so, something like that. She wasn't for sure, but
Yeah, so it's probably going to go up another 10%. So we're talking about $160,000. Well, some of that is for the vehicles, so we code some of it for the vehicles. And then just miscellaneous expenses. And then we bought the bus. So, any other questions? Or any questions on it?
So to get that software working like it should be, it's just maintaining like a regular driver? I mean, it's just the driver's not doing it, it's there, or the kids don't have the
It really didn't have anything to do with the kids. It's really a staffing issue. And we have plans to address it that I'm sure he'll talk to you at some point about.
So how does it work? Is it not automatic where they scan a card and it puts it into the system?
It is, but
and
it's
pulls the report?
you have to. I don't want to say things in an open session.
Okay.
So, any other questions on it? Okay, 36 is our extracurricular activity. Once again, consultants is the drug testing. Professional services. Oh, officials, yes, gosh. Drawing a blank there, yeah. Your referees and stuff like that. They go up every year too.
They're going up, they're gonna go up way up next year.
no, they can't.
They're paying about the double.
That's a code that we haven't been using, but I expect that we'll at some point be coming to you with using it. Then you have just your general, okay, so in 36 extracurricular activities, 91 is an athletics and 99 is a academics. So if you see Supplies junior high with a 91, that's just your general your general athletic supplies for the junior high. Then you have your football supplies, your boys basketball supplies, your boys track supplies, your golf supplies, and then we jump into an academic high school supplies. Then we have junior high academic supplies and elementary academic supplies. Let's go back up here, and there's some more, we'll get to some more sports later. These may change a little bit. Mr. Wiggins has told me that he really wants to change up how we're doing. Like, for example, letter jackets come from a specific sport budget, and he just wants to make a letter jacket budget so that it doesn't hit a sport for the kid having to have the letter jacket. And so he wanted to go ahead and go throughout this year, because I brought him the codes at the beginning of this year, and he's like, I'm just going to let them be this year. But he said that at some point in the future he wants to reorganize a little bit. So these may change, but this is how we currently have them for this year. You have cheerleading supplies. Band, typically most of their stuff is coded as 11 instruction, because even when they're on the marching field, they're still where it's considered for the class, because they get grades for it and stuff. So most of the time they don't get anything in extracurricular. We have that code there because we bought something and we stole some money from Post District to buy it. We bought the drum that they needed. So you guys told me that since we didn't have the bond, to buy their needed equipment out of local funds. Well, the drum we had was borrowed from another school. I can't remember. Stratford. And so it was a high need item. So, and we knew that we weren't going to use all of our post district expenses. So we just we added the line item and moved the money and bought them a new drum. Uniforms. If you remember, several years ago we bought all new uniforms for the football team, and that coach has been there. Just haven't ever taken it out. Cross country supplies. Girls basketball, girls track. We don't have the PEP anymore. We don't have ROTC. Supplies tournament, that's a unique one. Okay, so the way school accounting works, say Mr. Wiggins gets a donation from, like if you get a donation that's to replace something or to buy something, then we can specifically put that back into the account. So like say we spend $3,000 out of girls basketball to buy a basketball rack, and then we get a check from some organization, whether Booster Club, whoever, for that rack, then we just put the money right back in there. But if you just get general donations, you can't just put them into supplies accounts. So they have to go into miscellaneous revenue. Well, or like money they make at the track, it can't go into a supplies account. It has to go into a revenue account. That's the way the auditors, that's the way it has to work because of accounting. So what we've done, and I called the service center to figure out how to do this, because I was like, okay, I need a way for them to get the money that they are raising. And so what this is a 3-year average of stuff like that. And so that way it's a budgeted amount. And if like he brought in a lot of money this year, then next year this number will be up a little bit. Just so that he'll see the results of his effort, because the money is just going into the general fund otherwise.
Like all the money you made on Pantex relays and all that.
Yeah.
But the donation from Pantex would go
Into track supplies.
into this, right? Oh, into track supplies, right? Okay.
Because it goes to, well, no, that's right, you're right.
It would go into this, right?
It would go into this, yes, sir.
Yeah, because it would be for metals and things like that.
Correct.
Okay.
It depends, like I said, it depends. If it's specifically to offset an expense, it'll go towards wherever that expense came out of. If it's just a general donation, then yeah, it goes into the general fund, and then we get the money back later. Okay, you have supplies baseball, supplies volleyball, drama supplies, one act's expensive. speech supplies, softball, debate supplies, and prom supplies. Then we go into the other for 36. So you have travel, athletic department, that's the high school. This would be the student travel. So what's the difference between the two?
I would assume the top one's probably coaches and then that one's.
Well,
student.
no, that's what I was gonna say. No, that top one is not for students. It's for like,
That's the coaches.
coaches.
The top one, the athletic department, that's if
So 64.
they go to a clinic
Okay,
or something like that.
we need to discuss how that's coded. It really shouldn't be in 13, if it's at, so we'll talk about that. Okay, so that's student travel, and that's the coaches travel. My bad. That's the junior high students, the UIL students, so that's a academic 99. Junior high UIL travel, cheerleader travel, band travel, and then a lot of travel accounts that we don't use anymore. Then drama travel, speech travel, and then the post-district expenses. The post-district expenses pay for any time somebody goes beyond district, the expenses stop coming out of their individual budget. So anytime they go to anything beyond district, by district, regionals, whatever. And so you have one both for athletics and for academics. This insurance we pay so that we can offer a catastrophic injury insurance to the kids. Mr. Garrison and I talked about it. We really don't know a whole lot about it because the superintendent was in charge of that in the past. So, but that's how much we pay for it.
Should we look into that?
We did today. We've looked into it.
Just
I-
saying.
I would be interested to see if we've had any kids, like, according to Mr. Garrison, there was pamphlets that we had outside of the office. I'd be interested to see if any kids actually did it, because if not, we're wasting money,
Right.
so. But yes, we
It's
actually.
just like a Aflac or something like that to pick up if they do get hurt.
Yep,
And we offer that?
us ourselves.
Well, I mean, we pay,
We pay someone to
We
do
pay so that someone will offer it to the kids. We're not actually buying the insurance for the kids. We're buying.
well, I understand, that's, okay.
So if we do continue it, it's something we need to advertise more probably. And, I don't know,
that. Or something different.
Mhm.
right. Transportation field trip, okay, so this is one of those items that's specified by TEA. You have to budget money in 36 and then transfer it to 34. So at the end of the year, we'll transfer some of this to 34 to offset their supplies costs, their fuel costs. And it's just a requirement from TEA. Some years we transfer all of it if we've done a lot of trips. Some years we transfer just a very small amount. In this particular year, we didn't transfer any. Because that was the COVID year, the year, I don't know. We just didn't transfer any. We didn't think it was necessary. 34 was well over budget, and we just didn't transfer any. But on a typical year, now I'm really lost. Okay, there we go. In a typical year, we'll transfer, I don't know, 30,000, 25,000. It's just one of those things we have to do for TEA. Fees, dues, athletics. That's we go to a tournament, we have to entry fees. Fees, dues, UIL, roughly the same thing. Cheerleaders, same thing. Band, same thing. Drama, same thing. Speech, same. Fees, dues, district athletic UIL and district UIL. We split this out so that it wasn't in one of the accounts, so that they wouldn't spend it. At the beginning of the year, we get whoever is the district chair is supposed to send us out a done for money because what happens is whoever's district chair, everybody pays into the district chair, and then the district chair pays out all the expenses. The people running it this year aren't quite up to speed, and so they haven't asked us for the money yet. So they apparently just sent us a couple little bills. So, but yeah, so that's money is, and it typically costs around, I don't know. On some years it's been lower, like you can see, last year was only $4,600. Some years it's been over 8,000. It just depends on who's running it and how good they run it and how expensive they get on the trophies. Okay, that was it for 36. Any questions on 36? Okay, 41. 41 is district administration. That's everything, like all the costs for anything for y'all, anything for Mr. Garrison, anything for the rest of the staff here. Legal services superintendent. In the past, we've spent quite a bit on those legal services. Legal services board, we typically don't spend as much. The reason we spend as much, I alluded to earlier, is because of the stuff we had to do early in the year. Audit services is the audit that was presented to you. That's how much it costs. Lobbying expenses, once again, is a TEA required line item. I have to figure out how much so like we're members of, I don't know, we pay some membership fees to TASA, we pay some membership to TASB, TASBO. We're members of various organizations. And those organizations are required by law to tell us how much of our fees are used for lobbying. And then I have to total all that up, and then I come up with a budgeted amount. So it's just a TEA requirement. Professional Services Board. This is if you guys, we budget that so if you did the survey again, because it cost $5,000 when we had TASB do the survey, not us do the survey. And so we budgeted that in case you did it again.
What survey was that?
It was a survey we sent out to, what was it, all the staff?
The
It was the
staff,
staff.
yeah.
Yeah, all the staff. And
We
they
did it
replied.
several years in a row. We asked the questions and asked them to reply. In the first year, they were really leery of, but it wasn't us, it was, it was others wanting answers. And anyway, the second year worked a lot better
And
because
then we did
it
our
went straight
individual
to
one.
me. Yeah, I did a survey monkey and it went straight to me and then I printed it out and we all looked over it. And basically it was just to help us see how we were doing, what we could help them with, where we were lacking, for what they thought. And some were very good, some still
There's,
not real forthcoming.
wasn't a
but
great amount, was it? It was about 80%.
it's
the
77,
return?
yeah, 77, 80, yeah, percent, which was not bad.
But that was total staff, we didn't individualize as far as teachers. And then, at will, we didn't separate those.
And if we do it like Survey Monkey, like they've done it in the past few years, it doesn't cost us this $5,000. It's if we have TASB run the survey, it costs us.
Probably even more than that, because that was
Yeah.
like 4 years ago.
5
Yeah.
years, yeah. We had
Probably-
TASB do it because the answers all went to TASB, and so maybe they would think, realize that it wasn't the admin one. They were kind of afraid bosses were wanting the information, so. But it worked out pretty well. It was just,
Yeah, the first year was real low,
yeah.
about 60%.
So we did it about 3 years in a row, and we got quite a few things out of it that we tried to
Implement.
implement, yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
this next one is the leadership contract again. Then this is the leadership contract and our business support contract. Just in case I have to call the service center and say, hey, what do I do here? Just like I did with setting up that fund for athletics. Miscellaneous services superintendent. And that's just a catch-all if we don't really. Same thing with the board. The business office. I'm not sure what we use that one for. Do you know? Copy? Oh, the copier. Yeah. What are we putting that one? I don't either. There are a lot of numbers to remember everything, and you know, when we're sitting back at our desk, we can pull it up, and when we're doing the budget, we can pull up history and stuff and figure out why. Because we spent almost $10,000 in there last year. Just don't know what we spent it on. Okay, and then a benefit manager, that's our 403B management company. Then we have fuel for the superintendent, since he doesn't, he uses his own vehicle, so we don't have a whole lot there. If the superintendent buys books, we have to code it there. In-service materials, we don't really use. General supplies, superintendent, general supplies, business office, this is where we put all of our stuff, like, you know, pens, papers, stuff like that. And then copy paper for the business office. Oh, I duplicated all of these. I did them twice. I was like, why do we have 2 fuel accounts? But it's because I put it in there twice. Still looking?
I have it backwards. The 6294 is copiers and 6299 is admin department. And the other check. Where you doing?
So 6294. Oh,
The
copiers. That's why it's so much. And then the other one is for
whenever they go, no, I can get to 6299 is the copiers. I looked at the businesses there. And 6299.
This is exactly why I asked her to come tonight. I knew that off the top.
Well, that's, oh, you know what? One of them's the maintenance for the copier, and one of them's the overage charge that he actually uses for the superintendent.
The overage charge.
Like the maintenance and the.
Oh, just like we had 2 different accounts in. Yeah, of course. We should rename those copier and
I
copier
know.
maintenance. So that's the copier and copier maintenance accounts, just like you have at the campuses. Okay, travel superintendent is obviously the superintendent. Travel employee would be myself or any of the other staff. Travel non-employee is y'all when you go to a conference. Insurance and bonding is once again our portion of that big TASB insurance bill. Election costs, and that's how much you paid to do the bond thing. Newspaper notices is once again another TEA required. We have to say how much we're spending to put stuff in the newspaper. When we did the bond, it cost a ton because the lawyer gave us like a 16-page document to put in the newspaper, so it cost a ton. Awards and incentives. Things like the back-to-school breakfast or any of those type of things come out of that account. Like when we do the, I'm sorry, what? The turkeys? Yeah, they came out of that account. Anything that we do like that, once again, it's a morale building things. Any of those come out of there. Fees due superintendent, that's all the fees and dues they get. Fees dues board, like it costs for each one of you to be a member of TASB and to go to the convention. Fees dues business office, same deal for me, any of the things that it costs for us to join the organizations. And then this one, this $55,000, that was that, we had to pay back to the county for that DCP settlement. So that is 41. Questions on
What
there?
is the fees and dues on the business office usually run? Because like 2021, it was like 18, and then it's budgeted for 48.
Man, I have no idea why it would,
I mean, is it closer to 5, or is it closer to,
I'm assuming it's closer to
20.
5 because I wouldn't have put it back at 5, but I don't know what's in there. Mhm.
it's just a big difference? I just wonder.
It usually costs more than that to go to the convention too.
Yeah, especially when we fly. If it was in
If we
Houston.
fly, it's really expensive. Like if it's in Austin,
I have that.
it'll cost
Mo-
10 grand
Associates,
plus.
law firm.
Can you look last year, see what was so expensive? Because like we do have there's a couple of organizations that, like we're members of the Equity Center. We're also members of, Mocha Casey has a group called, it's TCPN, and it's a really good information group. They're the ones that were sending us the emails about the changes to the ADA that's the governor. So I mean, we get a lot of good information, but those don't cost that much. So those various organizations are around the 3,000. Because like No Casey's the most expensive one at $1,200. The Equity Center, I think it's like $600.
So it's usually more around.
Yeah, and I don't know why it was that big last year. $80 for TASBO.
Yeah, yeah. That's usually your dues and fees aren't.
Oh, I remember. Well, we had a penalty for the CD since we cashed it in early. And then,
So that was like, how much was the penalty for the CD?
no, it was just 1,800.
Yeah, to cash in the CD, there was a penalty, but
And we have Hilltop Securities, we have, Postal Service, Chase, Casby, Region 16. Nothing jumps out except for I need to look at this, because I have a correction here. What a copy. It's like 11,000.
so that would be the
Yeah,
difference.
that would be the difference. It's something we did later.
It's probably,
Oh, we did it 8:30. It was probably the
Mark.
auditor.
Yeah.
That's what
So-
it was.
Okay.
so Mark expensed something,
Mhm.
and when he does that, he just chooses random accounts to dump the money in the expense. And it's probably part of the cafeteria where we had to pay the, we have to transfer, I don't remember how much we transferred this last year, 40-some thousand to the cafeteria. He has to expense it somewhere, so that's what it would have been, $11,000.
So regularly it's,
Yeah, it's not.
You just threw something in there.
okay.
It's been strange, but it's been probably one.
I left my
So tell put it
CPA at
miscellaneous, so
home,
it don't look so bad right there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially
Richard's
since you're in
new
there
car.
with Richard. Yeah, I'd be saying,
Richard's
not
new laptop.
And that's why I had no idea, because I'm sitting there going, I don't remember an expense like that. Okay, any other questions?
How's the PS5 and the new? No.
Okay, 51, plant maintenance. We have a little bit in vehicle maintenance. Building maintenance, this is a 6,200, so this is a service. So this is like our pest people, our, anytime we hire plumbers, the window people, any professional company that has to come in and do something. is that. And that's about what it runs on a usual year. Grounds maintenance is the same thing, except for grounds, so that's probably majority of that is gonna be the people that spray for weeds. There'll be a few other things.
Do we have to contract all that stuff out, or can we do someone?
So it depends on the level of certification your staff has. So we do have a staff member that has pest management certification, but that means that he gets to oversee the spraying of the pest management. But we'd have to send him to school to get another level to be able to actually spray himself. Means he can put out like the little blue strips, but he can't spray chemicals. And so it's all about the level of certification that you have.
So is it cheaper to do that and send him to school than it is to pay the fee?
I would say sorta no.
Because you have to buy all the chemicals and mix them and then store them
And you'd have
and
to have
spray rigs and all that kind of stuff.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, I mean, you might have a large upfront cost, and then my other fear is that, okay, you train somebody up to where they have a good certification and they'll go work somewhere else where they can make more. I mean, it's, in today's labor structure, it's definitely a legitimate concern.
Well, like I said, we're gonna talk about that later anyway, so.
Yeah.
there's somewhere to have that too.
Yeah. Other maintenance repair, it's existed since I've been here. We've talked about just putting it into other maintenance buildings, but just haven't ever got to it. Building maintenance projects, that's when I come to, at that first budget meeting, and I say, and it comes as a result of that workshop that we do in July, I say, hey, here's the things that we're gonna try to fix this year. That's building maintenance projects. So that's extra money that if we get in a pinch, we can just say, okay, we're gonna cut back, or we're only gonna do things as they break. We're not gonna preemptively do things. So, I mean, as long as we can, I wanna keep doing that because I wanna get everything fixed up to a good level, but yeah. This was from when we had the mold remediation people. And then these two are the elementary repairs. On all those graphs and stuff that I showed earlier, I took these two amounts out because they're not a standard amount. So they were not in there. And then we have our utilities. We budgeted quite a bit in electricity because they told us there was going to be a 25% increase, and then it hasn't happened.
Yep.
So yeah, I'm really surprised. So
I bet it goes up.
yeah. Well, and that one has gone up quite a bit. Yeah. So we budgeted more because we thought it would, and it has. It may have gone up more than
Yeah, it has.
more than we budgeted. Yeah. So we're gonna have to steal some of the electricity to pay it. Okay. So this is just the amount of fuel that we spend in our vehicles. And then our janitorial supplies. Then building maintenance supplies, so the actual supplies, not the services of someone coming to do it. Ground maintenance supplies. And then another code that we don't use anymore. Then we have travel for sending them to training. And then this is the big, where we put the majority of the insurance expense, because the majority of the expense is the actual building coverage. So, any questions on 51? We have, I don't know, these are codes that have been left over for a while. A 6600 is a capital expenditure. So unless we're buying a vehicle, you wouldn't use it. Like a fixed asset, that's a weird one. So I don't know. But anyway, we don't use any of those codes. And once again, it just won't let me delete them. So, on software contract Rave Mobile. So we implemented this several years ago, probably 3 or 4. That was the app on the phone that would call 911. Every single incident that we've had that's involved calling 911, they have not used the app. Nobody thinks about it when a crisis is happening. So we don't plan on budgeting for that next year. we plan on letting that one go. People just dial 911, they just don't think about this app that,
Too many steps.
yep, it's too many steps. So, this is another one where I'm probably not gonna talk, because this is about the things that we do for security. And so in an open session, I don't really want to discuss those. Just know that we do like things like cameras and training and items like that in the rest of these budget items. So any questions about my non-information? Okay, 53. 53 is data processing. We spend a lot of money in data processing because a lot of the software that we use district-wide is paid for out of data processing instead of, we could just divide it up amongst the campuses, but it just makes more sense to me to say, okay, this is software, like for example, ASOP, our absence management software. Okay, we use it, yeah, every campus uses it, but we use it too. So instead of putting it on each campus, we just put it in 53 and mark it as for the business office. So, firewall, that's how much our firewall costs us. Actually, that's our current filter server plus some firewall expenses. Time clocks, that's how much our time clocks cost us a year. Absence management system, that's how much it costs a year. Software other, I hate, because that's several little pieces of software that we use that, they're, $700 a piece, and so it's not worth putting a line item in for it. But every year I have to go look and see what, like our website is in that. We have some recording servers for our computers that are in that. Just some stuff like that. This is our online application system, so that's how we list jobs. Ascender is the business software that we use and the student software that we use. So it's what generated this report, and it's how the campuses track all of their needed PIMS data and stuff like that. It's very expensive, but we have to have it. It's an app. You can't do it without it. DMAX, the software that all the campuses use for gathering a lot of data and doing reports. We did have a video conferencing contract so that we could do video conferencing with Service Center. That's as high as it's going to get because they canceled the contract on us and said, we're just using Zoom. And we're not using the video conferencing systems anymore. So, this is a cybersecurity contract that we have with the Service Center to help us try to maintain our networks, keep our networks safe. We've got a new filter server that we're switching to this year, primarily because the Chromebooks, when you take them home, we're required to filter. If it's a device we own, we're required to filter everywhere. And the Chromebooks currently at home really don't get filtered. They get reported on, but they don't get filtered. This new software, which we just started using in after spring break, is going to allow us to actually enable filters both in and away from the school. And it will replace the other one, so the other expense, so it's actually cheaper as well. This is how much we pay for internet. That's two separate internet connections, one through EMC3, which is a company out of Kansas, and one through Cable One as a backup. We've become so data dependent that we just can't, a day without the internet almost shuts us down nowadays. Like none of our Chromebooks would work. Even before we went to one-to-one Chromebooks though, all of our software, our Path Laser, I mean we use so much software nowadays that it's critical that we have an internet connection. So that's why we buy a backup. Now, the backup from Cable One is not that expensive.
That's the total between the two though.
That's the total between the two. So, it's a lot less than what it used to be. We used to get our internet from Region 16, and it was very expensive. And so we're actually, with two of them, are cheaper than what we were paying.
Can you get it from anybody, I guess?
Anybody that applies to we have a multi-year contract, but I think that contract's up next year. And it's through E-rate, and so we put out a Form 470, and then anybody can offer, and that's how we got these guys from EM3. is they're like, hey, we're responding to your thing, and nobody in Region 16 will try us, so try us. And so we talked to several people in Kansas that had them. They do have some hospitals around here. We're the only school they have. And everybody said they were great, so we tried them. And we've been down one time, I think, of significance since we went to them. So, and we're saving, gosh, I don't know, 12,000 by using them. So the service center's not very happy about it, but that's, you know, you do what you can. So
it's true. Get it to the chief first, right? Ain't that right, Chad?
I think it's gonna, I mean, when we renew, I'm pretty sure it's gonna stay the same price, because they talked to us already. We lease one piece of fiber between the high school and the elementary, and that's what it cost us a year for the contract. And it's already paid for itself. Last year, when a truck drove and severed it, and there was a big pile of cable out by the softball field, that was probably a $10,000 to $20,000 hit. And it didn't cost us a dime because of our management contract. So, just general supplies for the tech guys. And then software buyer scanner, we have a 3-year contract, so we didn't need anything this year. It'll be up next year, so we will have to add for it next year. And then supplies, tech maintenance, that's for all of our servers, our switches and stuff, and we're going to replace a server this year. So it's a little higher this year than it has been in the past. And then travel, if the tech guys go to anything, and we charge, I think it's half my salary to tech, maybe a third to tech, since I'm our technology director as well. And then I'm not sure why we charge some of the insurance to technology, but I do know why we charge some of the insurance to technology, because one of the coverages is a cybersecurity coverage, but it's free, so it doesn't cost, so we probably shouldn't be charging it to technology. Okay, that's 53. Any questions about the data services? Then I threw construction onto this slide too. We'll never have construction. Construction, like even when we do like the stuff at the elementary, it's not construction, it's plant maintenance. Construction is building a new building. So like if we actually built a storage shed, that would be construction. But if we buy a storage container, it's not construction. And so very seldom do we actually have anything in 81. I do. Let's look at one that's like a nice little cabin. So pupil appraisal, those are just leftover codes. Tuition other is if we have a student who is a special ed student that has to go to, say we had a behavioral student that was so bad that we couldn't manage them and we had to send them to a facility in Amarillo, it would come out of there. If we have somebody that has to go for the, I'm going to get the name right, the school for the deaf and blind, that has to come out of there. So we're required to have some money set aside in case we do have a student that has to go to one of those facilities. Payments physical agent, this is our special ed co-op, and that's how much it costs us to be a member of the co-op. In case you're looking at it going, wow, that's a lot of money, it would cost us far more to try to do it ourselves. Far more. And then that's how much we pay the appraisal district to do our appraisals.
We get that back?
We need to move that comma.
Okay, that is our 93 and 99. Any questions on those? So that's the line by line. Like I said, I didn't have any of the payroll in there because that's just set by who we hire. There's a few extra payroll accounts that aren't the money we set aside for substitutes, stuff like that, but it's all driven by how much we've used used in the years past.
So in that, I'm just, I could be wrong, but there was the 1,500 in the insurance. There was 6,500 in the software that we're gonna mix. And there was 2,500 in the video contract. Right,
Okay?
actually, 10.5, right there. I'm just thinking, and it'll be for a later date, but I was just bringing that number up, just out of those three things, that was already, right?
And I would say that's,
Right, so I mean, I'm just saying for future things we need that they're not on the agenda, so I won't talk about. But I thought in that, even though, and I understand it's a big pain, I really do appreciate you putting all that together. But that's already, I mean,
Well-
10.5 is a lot to me.
well, and one of the things is that you guys have get to see exactly what we're spending money on.
Well, I think that's important.
And that's something that you don't get to see. I mean, because you just approved at the fund and function level, that's what we present to you in August. But you don't get to see this, you know, so it's,
So if you go back to the elementary budget, when we spent the money on the roof, I don't know how hard that is to get back to.
well, see, right there.
Okay, so it's,
Wow.
we spent on the repairs 224 and we budgeted 600,000. So is that 600,000 already accounted for? Moving on, it's gonna be gone next year's budget?
Right. Well, so like both of those accounts won't be in next year's budget.
Right, but there's still close to 400,000 left in that one.
Right. And that's why, if you remember when I brought the budget amendment to you for the units on the top of the gym, I told you we have enough money budgeted, 51, we don't need to. Well, that's where I'm gonna use some of that 400,000, so that's 100,000 of that. But yeah, there's 300,000 there that's left. But what happens is that, just like I talked about earlier, that we typically budget for more than we actually spend. So right now, our budget is, was it $1 million deficit budget is what we budgeted? Well, 300,000 of it's gonna come right off the top. And then there will be more. And we'll end up having 250, 300,000 deficit budget. Maybe more because of if we don't win the appeals on the appraisal district.
So this 300 left over wouldn't help wipe out part of that 370 we lost. Right.
I mean, not really. I mean, it's all, well, okay.
Because it was budgeted.
It was budgeted, so in my mind, I'm taking it off the negative, so we're negative $1 million, so we're gonna move up 300,000, and then the 370 would put us back down, is the way my brain works on it, so we're still right back at the $1 million negative, but it's not gonna end up being $1 million negative. We're not spending anywhere near our full budget this year. I mean, we've been frugal, we're trying to be frugal, so.
Are the actual amounts on the elementary, are those pretty up to date there?
Yeah, we're done. I mean, so that's the entirety of what we're going to spend.
So what do we lack?
Windows and-
Windows?
Yeah, which I have not started the process on yet.
Okay.
I've called the architect, but we haven't yet. So any other questions? Well, I hope y'all got something out of it. I got stuff out of doing this. There was
No, I
some,
think it's awesome.
there were some account codes that I want to look at, and you know, you don't always sit down and go through it line by line. You know, when you're trying to hammer out a budget, you get those amounts on July 25, and you got to present a budget, you know, a week later. Sometimes you don't have enough time. So this was actually a good process for me as well.
I mean, it's nice to be able to go through it and just say, oops, well, maybe we shouldn't be doing A, or maybe we should be doing B.
We just need a detailed report on your budget line for last year.
That 11,000 there.
We want to know how big that TV really is. That's projection.
No, I think it's really important to do that, even though I know it's not the funnest thing in the world, but it's me. Especially like me and Chad, we've never done one, so here.
Okay, well, I am done.
Is the camera off?
No. We still
I
got,
I didn't know if you'd cut the can, I saw you.
no, I cut the desktop.
Okay, okay, I guess that's it. Does anybody else have any questions or anything else they wanted to do, say? Okay,
Thank you.
thanks, Mr. Hines. Will you call us out of, or will you,
Adjourn.
oh, yes, let's adjourn.